Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So as you know, it's been a crazy couple of days after the attempted assassination on President Trump. And so many of us have questions. So many of us have questions about what led up to the whole thing happening in the first place. Questions about the Secret Service, about the rooftops, the witnesses that have come forward and said that they were telling police that there's a guy on the roof and could be seen with a gun. There are witnesses saying that they told police of this threat. There's the sniper on the roof, the guy who's there to protect people, and he looks like he has the person on target. But he's waiting, and it seems like he didn't start firing until the shooter began firing.
And you know, that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old, and if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
So yes, people have many questions. Of course, people were observing the response of the media, the response of the Biden administration, and their responses were bizarre, to say the least. First, we had CNN, who absolutely refused to report this as a shooting, who refused to report this as an assassination attempt. We had the president himself saying that we can't say whether or not it was an actual assassination attempt. And the mainstream liberal media were still bringing up January 6th and still basically trying to blame Trump for what happened. And Trump supporters or conservatives, Republicans, they are the ones who are to blame because of January 6th and hateful rhetoric. Nothing about the hateful rhetoric that has come from the left for the past, coming up to 8 years, or even longer than that, because even just announcing he was going for president, right up until the assassination attempt.
Don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country. Maybe there will be.
People need to start taking to the streets. This is a dictator.
There needs to be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives.
Enemies of the state.
Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
Do something about your dad's immigration practices, you feckless.
When they go low, we can.
How do you resist the temptation to run up and wring her neck?
The biggest terror threat in this country is white men, most of them radicalized right up to the right.
I thought you should have punched him in the face. Because even if you lost, he insulted your wife. Yes. He came down the escalator and called Mexicans rapists and murderers. He said, well, what do you think I should have done? I said, I think you should have punched him in the face. And then gotten out of the race. You would have been a hero.
I'd like to punch him in the face. I said if we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
Punch some people in the face!
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
They're still going to have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump, and that's a fact.
Look, as his character is stabbed to death.
Where is John Wilkes?
I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
A Missouri state senator is under investigation by the Secret Service after saying she hopes President Trump is assassinated.
I will go and take Trump out tonight.
And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
And sadly, the domestic enemies to our voting system and our honoring our Constitution are right at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And that should be, everyone should take note of that on both levels, that this isn't, they're not going to let up, and they should not.
If you think we're rolling now, you ain't seen nothing yet.
What was your thoughts about the assassination attempt?
They missed. They missed. He should have died. He's not good for this country, and he never will be. He's the worst person that can be ever in politics. He's not even a politician.
You're disappointed that the shooter missed Donald Trump?
100%. No, well, nothing. He should have died. She doesn't like him as much as I do, but she's a little more sympathetic to people dying.
I think that the shooter was justified.
He did what he wanted to do.
Do you think it was justified? Like, do you think
in his eyes, I'm sure it was. But you know what? Since he missed, I can guarantee there's going to be 100 people that are going to try to not miss.
Would you support that?
100%. He doesn't need to live. He doesn't need to be a president.
So, hold on.
100%. Yeah.
Why so much hatred for Donald Trump?
Because, for one, he's a sucker. You guys move on. You guys move on, right? All right, we're done.
But there's been no acknowledgement of the fact that the mainstream liberal media have literally been radicalizing people, young people especially. Now we know the shooter is just 20 years of age, graduated just a couple of years ago, apparently registered Republican, but donated to the Biden administration. Wouldn't surprise me if this kid sits at home watching MSNBC all day. An easy way to become radicalized.
President Donald Trump was shot in Pennsylvania tonight at a rally in what was an obvious assassination attempt. Just 8 days ago. And let this sink in because the MSM will not tell you about this. Just 8 days ago, President Joe Biden said it was time to put Trump in a bullseye. They tried to take him out by electoral manipulation. It didn't work. They tried to take him out with lawfare. It didn't work. So now they are trying to take him out physically.
Moving his hair. Hold. When you're ready. On you. Ready. Move. Up. Move. Go. Up. Hawkeye's here. Hawkeye's here. Move to the stair. Stair, get ready. Stair, get ready. We ready? Shooters down. Shooters down. Are we good? Shooters down. Shooters down. Are we good to move? Shooters down. We're good to move. We're clear. Let's move. Let's move. We're clear.
Let me get my shoes. Let me get my shoes.
I got you, sir. I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes, sir.
Hold that in your head. It's bloody.
So we gotta move to the bus. Move to the bus. Let me get my shoes.
Okay, my shoes down.
Watch out.
Well, the very latest from that rally, the moment where it appears that shots were fired. Certainly the Reuters news agency reporting that shots were fired at that Trump rally in Pennsylvania. We saw there, once those sounds were heard, if indeed they were shots, that the security team surrounded Donald Trump, as you see there now, and escorted him to his vehicle to be driven away from that rally. So he has now left that rally in Butler in Pennsylvania after the incident in which we believe shots were fired.
So, of course, we do have some people who questioned whether this was some sort of staged event because it did seem like you were in a movie. It really did. But you can hear the Secret Service say, we're clear, shoot her down, or something to that effect. So they knew the shooter had been taken out. That's when they brought him up. And he wanted to let the crowd know that he was okay. That's why he did the whole fist pumping and all of that iconic moment, telling the crowd, the people to fight. And yeah, absolutely breathtaking moment right there. And I was very happy to see that he got up and he did that because he was letting the people know that he was okay. Because when people are in shock, they can do all sorts. And then just a few seconds after, they're gone. So just because, he stood there initially, touched his ear, that didn't mean that he was okay. And what he did was a huge relief to everybody who was there that day, who witnessed it. And I think that was his priority, just to let the people know that he was okay. And we got that iconic photo. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. You really can't. So fast forward. Again, like I said, people have questions.
So we walked up, and probably 5 to 7 minutes of Trump speaking. I'm estimating here. I have no idea, But we noticed a guy crawling, bear crawling up the roof of the building beside us, 50 feet away from us. So we're standing there, and we're pointing at the guy crawling up the roof.
And he had a gun, right?
He had a rifle. We could clearly see him with a rifle. Absolutely. We're pointing at him. The police are down there running around on the ground. We're like, hey man, there's a guy on the roof with a rifle. And the police were like, huh, what? Like they didn't know what was going on. We're like, hey, right here on the roof, we can see him from right here. We see him. He's crawling. And next thing you know, I'm thinking to myself, why is Trump still speaking? Why have they not pulled him up the stage? I'm standing there pointing at him for, 2 or 3 minutes. Secret Service is looking at us from the top of the barn. I'm pointing at that roof, just standing there like this. And next thing you know, 5 shots rang out.
So you're certain that the shots came from that guy on the roof?
100%. 100%.
And he was up there for a couple of minutes.
He was up there.
You were up there for a couple of minutes.
Absolutely. At least 3 to 4 minutes.
And you were telling the police and the Secret Service.
We were telling the police. We were pointing at them for the Secret Service, who were looking at us from the top of the barn. They were looking at us the whole time when we were standing by that tree.
Could they see
binoculars?
Could they see it?
Probably not, because the roof, the way the slope went, he was behind where they could see. But why is there not Secret Service on all of these roofs here?
So people are questioning, and rightly so, the competency of the Secret Service, the people who were there to ensure Trump's safety. To witnesses saying they can see a guy bear crawling with a gun. Why would they not respond to that? That makes no sense. This was conveyed to police officers. Did they not believe them? I don't know. And even more importantly, why was that area left unmanned in the first place? And then you had people saying that they didn't respond quick enough. He went down himself. It wasn't like the shots were fired and they jumped on him and pulled him down. He went down himself and then they, surrounded him. But people have also noticed that Trump was protected by at least 3 women. And the head of the Secret Service is a woman. And people have questions. People have questions about how they got those positions in the first place. The term DEI has been thrown around. Look, I understand that term gets thrown around a lot. Whenever we're talking about a woman, somebody who's slightly ethnic, DEI gets thrown around. And I can understand some people are sick of hearing about it. But in this case, you do have to consider, are we talking about DEI hires? And are we seeing the consequences of that? Because there are a lot of women involved in this. A situation where you're protecting a 6'3" man, it would be hypocritical for me to talk about how men are stronger than women physically and dominate in sports over females. It would be hypocritical of me to point all of that out in defense of women's sports, to say how we should not be having male athletes competing against women, but then ignore the physical advantages that men have when it comes to protecting the president. The fact is, a 6'3" man being protected by women who are much shorter, who don't have the same physical strength as the male Secret Service officers. How did that come about? And this is so serious because it could have been a completely different story, as we know. He moved his head to face the Jumbotron. If he was facing the crowd, just even by less than an inch, slightly in the wrong direction, the bullet would have,
This photo is crazy and it depicts the bullet just about passing Trump's head. And obviously perspective is everything, but it was so close to hitting him. And thankfully he wasn't hurt and only his ear got grazed, but we don't know what yet, but thankfully no one got hurt. However, unfortunately, I don't know if this was the bullet that killed the individual at the rally, but someone did actually die, unfortunately, and 2 people are in critical condition. However, Trump seems to be safe and the shooter is also deceased. But it's crazy how close this was to actually hitting Trump. And if this had happened, this would have been one of the most devastating moments in political history. And I think it would have been a major turning point in regards to firearms and everything in America.
It's an absolute miracle. It really is. The 2 officers on the roof need to be investigated. The one laying down had a shot lined up but didn't take it before the shooter successfully fired 8 shots. This lack of action led to a dead Trump supporter and the former president getting shot, as well as 2 attendees getting critically injured. So it's not just the women being questioned. They are all being questioned. The snipers are being questioned. The response in general is being questioned. And the lack of preparation to prevent this from happening. Because the guy was able to get in place to do what he did. There should have been someone there on that rooftop. So these are some of the responses. So Libs of TikTok, who is a woman. Guys, is it just me? Or is the agent who cowered behind DJT instead of protecting him the same one who couldn't holster her gun? Who is she? She needs to resign or be fired. So these are the sort of images. I mean, just the photo itself it shows the intensity of the moment. I'm not going to judge this woman, but Libs of TikTok's questions are very much valid. And you can see the fear in her face, even with the sunglasses on. She was very nervous and she couldn't holster her weapon. She couldn't holster it. Her hand was shaking, understandably. So she had to take a breath. It looked like to me she had to take a moment so she could calm down to holster her weapon properly. Oof, intense, absolutely intense. Say no to DEI hiring. I'm a woman and I believe that women don't belong in the Secret Service. I thought this was a job that required peak fitness. It looks very odd. Now this is Kelly Jane Keane. We know Kelly Jane Keane, or Posey Parker, is an absolute woman's advocate. She doesn't call herself a feminist, but she is a women's right activist, very vocal about women's spaces being protected, women's sports being protected. She herself has been attacked physically multiple times in multiple countries. So she is for women. But in this situation, she is questioning if this is the most suitable position for a woman to be in. I believe police officers have to be in shape. We all have the stereotypes of them eating donuts or whatever. But I have seen many an overweight police officer. Police officers who can't even run after suspects. And dare I say, some of them have chosen to shoot the suspect instead of running after them. At least according to what I've seen in video footage. It must absolutely be 100% a requirement that police officers are in shape, Secret Service officers, people who work in security, who are required to actually protect, like armed security. They should be treated or expected to treat their position in the same way you would if you were an athlete. Standards need to be maintained because it's a matter of life and death. We can't be talking about the advantages that men have over women in sports, but then ignore it in other areas when it is a matter of life and death. These corporations brag about DEI, bragging about DEI and how diverse they want to make the workforce or whatever. And it does come across as if it's more of a priority to them these days than it was in the past. And now it poses the question, what are the consequences of it? When we put diversity over being qualified, when we put diversity over safety even.
To expand hiring, they're aiming to have 30% women recruits by 2030 and even allowed YouTube influencer Michelle Carre to train with agents.
But I'm very conscious as I sit in this chair now of making sure that we need to attract diverse candidates and ensure that we are developing and giving opportunities to everybody in our workforce, and particularly women.
That workforce will be pivotal for the 2024 campaign season, which for the first time includes a former president who already has lifetime protection. Agents were there when Donald Trump was arraigned in New York.
We were able to work out the details ahead of time of how that particular day was going to go, but we will always ensure the safety of all of our protectees that we have.
The service has a zero-fail mission, a mission officers are training to uphold.
Wow. Another imbecile in charge of a government agency that almost cost the president his life.
It's the priority. It's making it a priority. That's the issue. Extreme incompetence, or was it deliberate? Either way, the SS leadership must resign, Elon Musk said. DEI is clearly the priority of today's Secret Service. Protecting President Trump was obviously low on their priorities. I mean, you're escorting him into court. Whoop-de-doo. That's obviously very different from being in a situation where there is a shooter. And sadly, not only was the former president shot, people lost their lives. People lost their lives that day. It's not only protecting the president, it's protecting the American people too. So Kimberly Cheadle is the 27th director of the US Secret Service, sworn in to office September 2022. She is responsible for successfully executing the agency's integrated mission of protection and investigations by leading a diverse workforce composed of more than 7,800 special agents, uniformed division officers, technical law enforcement officers, and administrative, professional and technical personnel. Prior to her appointment, Ms. Cheadle served as Senior Director in Global Security at Pepsi, where she was responsible for directing and implementing security protocols for the company's facilities in North America. Her role at PepsiCo involved developing risk management assessment and risk mitigation strategies. But this is what Kelly Jane Keane said. So women are not as big or strong as men and don't have as much stamina to compete against them in a 200-meter butterfly swimming race, but are exactly the same when it comes to close personal protection for a president. And someone responded, if the only skill that were needed to protect the president was to be the biggest and the strongest, then you might have a point. Kelly responded, men have quicker reflexes too. So the head of the Secret Service, with her in particular, her job is not to, be strong and tough and quick. Her job is to coordinate everything and to make good decisions when it comes to who is assigned where, I'm assuming. To have protocols in place, to implement all of that. But my thing is, if diversity, equity and inclusion is her priority, then what is going to be the consequences of that? So after Kelly said men have quicker reflexes too, the person said, sure, but women are better at picking up non-verbal cues and multitasking. Yep. A mix of different people is probably the best. If you decide in advance to only have men or only have women, you're going to miss out on people with useful, proven skills. Yes, so frontline protection officers shouldn't be anything but the most exceptional candidates. So this is a conversation. It's a good conversation to have, and I'm glad people are having it amicably and respectfully on this thread. Being giant and strong enough to physically cover and move a big man, one too stupid or arrogant to keep his head down as bullets are flying, by the way, are only a few of the many exceptional talents people need. Some women are taking the criticism of Trump's female Secret Service bodyguard as a criticism of all women. I think this is a perfect example where we recognize the important differences between men and women. I'm not a fan of the way some people are describing it, but there's a lot of anger about what happened, so the tone has to take a backseat to logic. I think women do ourselves a disservice if we defend everything, even when the criticism is legitimate. I'm all for women in the police service to protect other women. However, it seems illogical to me that a 5'4" woman would be assigned to protect a 6'3", 200-pound plus male presidential candidate. And I would say the same thing if that person was a man. In certain circumstances, size matters. It just does. Yeah, that's very well written there. The fact is, if it was a 5'4" man, people would be laughing and be like, what's he doing there? If it was a man, he was slightly overweight looking. Again, people would give him a hard time. We know this, especially in comparison to the other Secret Service agents. And Kelly said, FYI, I do think the right person to head up the Secret Service could easily be a woman, as long as she was right for the job. Matt Walsh, why is the female agent ducking her head and exposing Trump? Now, when he asked this question, some people were saying because she's scared or whatever. But the fact is, even if she wasn't ducking her head, his head would still be exposed because she's short, or much shorter than Trump. Even standing up, she's about a foot shorter than him, leaving his head exposed. Farcical. He's actively choosing not to duck here, to be fair. She lost her nerve and got scared because women aren't meant to be in these kind of roles. Here's a picture for you, Rubes. She's standing up and he's still taller than her. She's not ducking, she's just too damn short to be a Secret Service agent. Obviously, she can't shield him all the way up, can she? So there are scenarios where women are assigned to protect women, and people are saying they don't have a problem with that. But when it comes to men, they're saying that it's not suitable for a woman to be assigned to protect him, that he would be better off with men protecting him. So obviously when it comes to height and strength, those factors are important, those factors matter. When it comes to somebody who's facing an imminent threat, my thing is you do have to tackle the person to the ground. I would think you need to jump on that person, get them down. That would be more difficult for a woman to do while protecting a man. But another woman can easily, do what they need to do.
We can get out of this. No disrespect to the many women who are willing to lay down their lives, right? I have no disrespect. There are tons of women who can shoot guns, right? And shoot them very well. But when it comes to the responsibility of guarding the former president of the United States, we need men. Can we acknowledge reality? Are we allowed to acknowledge gender and sex and the natural biological proclivities of men versus women? Are we allowed to do that? Because guess what? I don't care whether I'm allowed to do it. I've been doing it the entire time. I want male pilots. I want male security guards. I want men back, okay? Men back doing male tasks that they are naturally inclined to do because of their body composition, because of the testosterone that is coursing through their veins. It impacts women differently than it impacts men. That adrenaline rush that we get, something happens to a kid, I very much want there to be women there. When we are talking about guarding the life of President Donald J. Trump, the fact that there were so many women there is just unbelievable.
I don't agree with Candace on everything, but Candace Owens did point out the hormones. Remember, according to trans activists, all we need are hormones to be either male or female. If you inject yourself with estrogen, you're a woman. If you inject yourself with testosterone, you're a man. And when it comes to these differences, hormones do play a factor. Women obviously carry a lot more estrogen and a lot less testosterone. Women are more emotional. It affects us differently. That rush of adrenaline in a life or death situation, men and women are going to respond differently. And as we saw there, one of the women appeared to be kind of hiding, kind of scared. She couldn't holster her gun because her hand was shaking. Now, that could happen to a man, perhaps. Now, what happened with Trump obviously doesn't happen all the time. Last time we can remember was Reagan. And then the most brutal example of an assassination is JFK. So I don't think those Secret Service officers have experienced this before firsthand. They've trained for it, but I doubt they've actually experienced it before. Not with a president or a former president. And this is one of those situations where, wow, it actually happened. You can train for it all you want, but until it actually happens, you don't know how you're going to react. Now we know April is a powerlifter. She has an awesome physique because she's an athlete. And she said the following: I'm pro-woman, almost 6 feet tall, took policing in school, and I'm an elite powerlifter stroke athlete. I also understand the biological differences between men and women. A man that is 6'3", Trump's height, would still be better suited than me for his immediate Secret Service detail and less emotional. Hashtag done with DEI. The problem is the skills they are filtering for. There is a place for women in security detail, perhaps not the one where your height is half that of the person you are protecting. April said, I absolutely agree. I share this opinion. Opponents say that makes us misogynists, but I would argue that I'm a better feminist than they will ever be because I want all women to find value and happiness in their lives, and I recognize that doesn't always come with being equal to men. My thoughts too. There are some cases where I think women aren't best suited to the field. And I say that as a woman who's worked in trades and mining my entire life. Maybe so, April, but when it hits the fan, I'm gonna hide behind you. Men are larger on average, but I disagree entirely that men are in any way less emotional and more rational than women. I'm disappointed you think that, April. I was a firefighter for over 25 years and was no more emotional doing my job than any of the men. I was also not the weakest link in my team, nor were the smaller men. I'm talking about a Secret Service agent, not a firefighter, completely different roles, and you don't carry a gun. On average, women are more emotional than men. We are also more nurturing by habit, which makes us more emotional. Certainly, there are women out there that show very little emotion. They do exist. Now, I am somebody who dreamed of being a police officer at one point. I don't think this is to say that there is no place for women in law enforcement. There's no place for women in security. There are women in jobs like construction. They make very good money. They do very well. I've spoken to men who work in, jobs that are very physically demanding, and there are a few women who work in those positions. The men sometimes do things to make up, for her not being as physically strong. They do more, they go above and beyond to accommodate their female colleagues. Well, that's just what you do. When you're a team, you work together. And from what I see, it's not like they necessarily mind, but that is a reality. It's not always the woman can lift just as much as the men. The woman can work at the same pace as the men can work at. The reality is that's not always the case. So Cheadle, the head of the Secret Service who we heard from there, has received backlash from many politicians and people across the country in the wake of the assassination attempt on Trump. Many have called on her to resign or be fired, claiming she is more focused on diversity and inclusion than focusing on her role. Instead of focusing on keeping our leaders like Trump safe, she's more worried about diversity and hiring more women. She should be fired and investigated immediately. This is a national security risk, Benny Johnson, a media personality, wrote in a post on X. So, House representatives say they're going to be having a meeting looking into this. Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle should be suspended immediately. Newt Gingrich, former Speaker of the House, commented on X after the attack on Trump. It will be clear the agents with President Trump have been asking for more support, which would have given them the agent to station on the rooftop, which would have been standard operating procedure. She should have no more role in the Secret Service. Wow, so it's a lack of agents. Perhaps could be the reason why there was no one man in that roof. That is absolutely unacceptable. If that's true, there is absolutely no justification for that. You assign the number of agents that is necessary to ensure the president or former president's protection. I mean, that goes without saying.
And that's a little bit of a... He's going down!
So new footage shows the crowd spotting the shooter before Secret Service take action. He's got a gun, multiple people yell.
They called him names. He won anyway. They impeached him twice on ridiculous pretenses. They fabricated a lot about what happened on January 6th in order to impeach him again. It didn't work. He came back. Then they indicted him. It didn't work. He became more popular. Then they indicted him 3 more times. And every single time his popularity rose. So if you begin with criticism, then you go to protest, then you go to impeachment, now you go to indictment, and none of them work, what's next? I mean, graph it out, man. We're speeding toward assassination, obviously, and no one will say that, but I don't know how you can reach that conclusion. You know what I mean? Like, they have decided, permanent Washington, both parties have decided that there's something about Trump that's so threatening to them, they just can't have him.
And that's what it all comes down to. I'm sure I'm not the only one who saw this coming, because they've literally tried everything else. But what else was there left to try? So with this being an imminent threat, Why was the security from the Secret Service not ramped up? I mean, there were even politicians, reps, suggesting that he has his Secret Service protection taken away since becoming a convicted felon. With all of the threats against him, they wanted to take away his Secret Service protection at one point. Now they're claiming that they want to increase it. They're going to look into increasing it. Even for RFK Jr. too, perhaps. And at this point, people are saying that perhaps Trump should decline Secret Service protection and get his own. Don't get me wrong, all of Trump's family who have made statements have thanked the Secret Service. He has thanked the Secret Service. But of course, there are people looking in on this and saying that he might want to rethink that. So let me know what you think. Please share your thoughts down below. I'm not against women working in certain professions. I think there should always be the option because we're all allowed to pursue what we want to pursue. But was it the best for Trump, a 6'3" man, to be assigned, women protecting him who are 5'4", and all of that? Men, especially tall men, should have other tall men protecting them. Do you agree? Let me know your thoughts down below. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves. Like, comment and subscribe. And God willing, I will see you in the next video.